I like to be as prompt as possible. We always have people that have other meetings in these cities at night as well, and we have one this evening that needs to leave at 6:15. So I'd like to at least get through most of the business of the evening. So I'd like to start with the roll call and introductions.
Atherton. Belmont. Brisbane.
Here.
Burlingame.
Here.
Colma.
Here.
Daly City. East Palo Alto.
Here.
Foster City. Half Moon Bay.
Here.
Hillsboro. Menlo Park. Millbrae.
Present.
Pacifica.
Present.
Portola Valley.
Here.
Redwood City.
Right here.
San Bruno.
Here.
San Carlos. San Mateo.
Here.
South San Francisco.
Here.
Woodside.
Here.
County of San Mateo.
Here. Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to the minutes of April 17th, and I want to just make one note. We need to add Millbrae Councilmember Marge Colapietro. So with that.
Motion to approve.
Here.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Item number 3 is a consent agenda, but there is no action requested. So we'll move on to the operational area report, which is an attachment. Lieutenant Kernan, are you going to speak on that, or is that just an attachment? Just an attachment. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Then we'll move on to old business, the JPA status update. We are going to be asked to take action on this. Captain Weiss?
Good evening, Madam Chair, and all members of the council. I'm before you to give you an update from last meeting, where I presented that there were some edits that were not in the JPA document that made it around to all the cities and were signed by the respective councils and was coming back. What we've done since the last meeting is trying to outline a very clear process in which we're going to take this moving forward. And I'd like to say that, as bad and as difficult it was for me to come before you and admit to that mistake that we made, we do think that we're going to end up with a better product at the end of the day. We've gotten a lot of feedback from different people since that time, and we think that the end product will be very, very detailed and specific to represent our Joint Powers Authority. So what we've done in the staff report that's in your packet, we've outlined a kind of a 7-step or 7-phase approach as to how we're going to take this moving forward. And I'll just go over them really quickly. Several of the members provided feedback to OES as to some of the edits that they like there. What we've done, and all edits that are going to be done through this process are going to be color-coded. So if somebody made an edit to it, it's going to be tied directly to that individual. So when it comes to the review process, you'll know, you can go right to the edits that you were concerned with and see that based on the color code. Step 2 is that we will take the final, what we think is the final draft. We will send it to the Emergency Managers Association for their input and any edits that they want. Again, anything that they would like changed will be color coded. We'll be able to track that. Next, we'll send it off to County Council. They will give their blessing and review of that, and then we will move it forward to this body on September 18th, 2014, and we will present it back to you again with the idea that 5 days after that, we will send it back out to the cities and give the cities a deadline of December 3rd, 2014. So we'll give a nice period of time where we can get it back through, have enough time where everybody can review that, and then ultimately we'll be back in front of you during our January 2015 report, where we will hopefully have the council finally adopt that, and then the last phase of what we'll be doing will be to bring it to the Board of Supervisors for final approval. So the action that I'm requesting is that, does this 7-step process sound like a logical process to move forward to get this done in a thorough and detailed process?
Okay, thank you, Captain Weiss. So what you basically asked for is for us to bless these next steps and let you take it and run.
Exactly, and just so, you know, when I come back in September, there wasn't any confusion about what process we were taking. You know, we're outlining it here, and if you agree to it, we'll take that and we'll run with it.
Okay, any questions, comments? Marge?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A very good report. I am very, very impressed with the way that you had set this out. It makes terrific sense to me. It's simple, it's very clearly written, and I think it's, it covers all the bases in the order that it should be in. I have one question on page 2 under, excuse me one second, phase 5. When, on line number 2 on the far right, when it goes to the city council meetings for council to approve as recommended and have it returned by December 3rd, did we ask the first time for a resolution by the city council to be turned in?
Yes,
So that will hold true for this one.
that's correct.
So in that particular portion, when you communicate with the city manager to have it placed on the agenda and also say returned by council resolution may be good. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Marge. I know the next item you're going to talk about the conflict of interest, but should we talk about that here too? Because it's recommending that we actually file, it looks like in June, even though we won't have the final JPA until January of 2015. Am I reading that correctly?
Correct. So, well, the conflict of interest code, so that what we did with that is we actually inserted it into the JPA. But Lieutenant Colonel will talk a little bit about our status on where we are as of right now. I don't know if you want to address that now or just wait till the next
Well, I don't know
agenda
if
item.
the recommendation is that we do that. I assume you want us to vote on okaying that we're going to, I mean, I don't think we have a choice, but why don't we, let's maybe for sake of keeping it smooth, why don't I go ahead and ask if there's a motion to approve moving this phased approach forward, and then we'll let Lieutenant Colonel speak of that, and if there's any problem or whatnot, and then we'll get into
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Okay, why don't we go ahead then and talk about the conflict of interest form?
Good evening, Madam Chair and honorable members of council. We did adopt the conflict of interest code last year during one of our quarterly meetings. However, it was not in the JPA yet, so it's part of the JPA revision, and we still want to include that. That's why it was brought up in my memo that I wrote, because in the first draft of the revision, it simply had a one line that mentioned the code, the conflict of interest, but it didn't have any language supporting that. So we just added some language behind it to make it more official, more formal. So because that's a new addition, that's why I mentioned it. So that'll be part of this revision process. So it'll be a formal addition, even though it has already been voted on and approved last year by this group. And the other thing, I just wanted to give a brief update. Thank you for those who have sent me your conflict of interest form 700s. To date, I have approximately 50% of the membership. So this is just a friendly reminder to you that if you haven't done so, just please think of me and just photocopy one that you may have already prepared for your cities, and I will keep it in my folder. If anyone has a question, if you don't know if you have already sent one or not, I actually have a list here of the cities who have sent one or not, and this is available for your review if you'd like to see that.
Lieutenant, is it on the same time frame as like for instance, when I do the county, is it on the same, do you want the same one for this past year?
So, yeah, so it's all the same from last year, so this is
Use that one,
2013.
okay. With
Because
the-
2014 hasn't expired yet.
Right, okay.
But just a Madam Chairman.
Yes, please.
So just to clarify, we should be adding the OES as one of the agencies on our Form 700s.
Yes.
When we normally fill it out for our other roles. And then to the extent that if this is a countywide activity, then it expands the scope of where the conflicts may take place. Is that how we should interpret it?
It should be for the letter of the law, yes, but I think what we have been doing is just adding OES as your membership to this council, Emergency Services Council. Just this is one more thing that you're involved with, and and that was sufficient for our record keeping. If you have any other interest with the county government, is that what you're asking?
No conflict.
Yeah.
I think I could answer that because I sit on regional bodies, and since if you have to file a form, whether it's a city, county, or regional body, your area expands as to where your conflicts could be. So I believe you do have.
That's how I interpret it. And then, so then whether my clerk actually saw OES and made a copy and sent it to you, I should check with you to find out.
I have it right here. I can just pass it around if that's easy for you.
And all you have to do is copy or add OES, copy it, and do an original signature. You don't have to do the forms all over again.
Just the front page.
You need an original signature. I'm an expert in this. I've been doing it for a long time.
You do too.
Okay, so I think we're good with that.
Okay,
Okay,
thank
you
you.
didn't really need an action on it, you're just filling us in. Okay. Great, let's move on to new business. The EMA update, Captain Halloran. Welcome.
Madam Chairman, members of the council, good evening. The Emergency Managers Association has been very active since we last met. As you know, the EMA was formed to bring different disciplines together. Emergency management is not just police and fire. We have a wide membership. It's growing. We have utilities involved now, including water districts, water companies, PG&E, Stanford Linear Accelerator, which a lot of people don't realize is wholly within San Mateo County, is a member. So we have a lot of different voices and opinions and disciplines at the table, which is really productive for us. We have a lot of working groups established, and we've been working on a lot of projects. One that we finished right after the last Emergency Services Council was we got standardized emergency call signs for each one of your jurisdictions so that your emergency manager can come up on the air with county communications or any of the cities and be recognized as the emergency manager. We folded that into the existing call sign list, worked with county communications, with the fire chiefs and the police chiefs on it. So that'll be a good thing moving forward. We have made, at the last emergency managers meeting, we had a large presentation and a lot of the meeting was devoted to the drought. The drought is now a standing item on our agenda until it rains again. And we're kind of trying to keep ahead of it and seeing what we can do other than to make it rain regarding the drought. Like I said, several of our working groups have been working on some projects. One of the most active is the Training and Exercise Working Group, and they're working closely with OES on 2 grants that were approved last year. One is for a unified command training, which is bringing field commanders, battalion chiefs from the fire service, typically sergeants from the police and sheriff's office together to work incidents together, so that we can form a unified command post and do a better job in large incidents and small, such as the fires in Redwood City or a hazmat or a barricaded subject or a school shooting or whatever it may be. So there's going to be currently the plan for the unified command training has gone out to the EMA membership for comment. It's currently getting comment returned to the vendor, and the plan for that is to have those exercises in advance of a zone exercise that's mentioned on tonight's agenda. And what the zone exercises are, and I believe you have a handout that has the schedule on it, is essentially EOC exercises where the county is broken up into zones, and the incidents that happen in the different zones are specific to problems that that zone may have. As you'll notice, the North County zone, which is a sarin gas attack at the BART station, also plays into a requirement that public health has for a mass casualty type drill and exercise. So it actually accomplishes several things in one exercise. The Central County zone is going to be doing a region-wide utility failure due to widespread flooding. Hoping for rain again. We're doing everything we can to make it rain. The South County zone is a credible threat to numerous critical facilities, including schools. And the coast side is a wildfire exercise causing large-scale evacuation and sheltering. So we're really looking forward to these, and the dates are on the handout that you were given, and the emergency managers are working on this, as are the fire chiefs and police chiefs associations and training managers to move those forward. We've also got some other things on the horizon. We're working with Red Cross on standardizing shelter policies and shelter operations so that there's some consistency across the jurisdictions and that things run smoother. We learned a lot from the fires in Redwood City where we had to set up, where OES was instrumental in setting up large shelters that were assisted by the Red Cross. So it's been a very busy couple of months, and it promises to continue being that way. Any questions or?
Any questions for the captain? Seeing none, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now going to move on to a drought update by Brian Mulder.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the council. Well, we're in our third year of the drought, statewide drought, and we're just feeling its effects right now. We do have a drought critical situation in the county service area, number 7, that services La Honda community. And associated with that, Sam McDonald Park is, or Memorial Park is closed, and they've cut off they can't pump from the creek anymore. Worse than that, the drinking water source for CSA 7 on Alpine Creek is at a critical stage. Though there's water being pumped, we don't know how much longer we can pump it for. And that serves about 70 connections downstream to the west. So we're working on those with Public Works. We have an action plan that we're working for. We have objectives that we need to accomplish and by next week. And we're partnering with the state to do that. We can't do it without them. One new situation that's come up with the drought is we have a YMCA camp, a few of them in the area, on the south side of Pescadero Creek Road. One of them, the Redwood Glen, is going to be out of water on Monday. They were able to pump enough water for their guests that are staying this weekend, but they'll be out of water Monday. And myself and the state representative are going to meet with them on Monday morning to see what the options are to keep them in business. It'll be a weekly thing that we do as a task. There'll be some tasks that we do daily in our office and the office of the State Office of Emergency Services to make sure we're okay. But we're seeing it for real right now.
The county manager's also been briefed last week on this. He's fully aware of the situation. And we're working with some water resources groups as well.
I'm working with a lot of departments from the state, Department of Water Resources, Cal OES, State Department of Health, Drinking Water Division, our own Public Works, our Public Health, and the Parks Department to see what we could do to improve the situation. Any questions?
Thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian? This is a pretty serious issue. It's one park so far, but there may be others down the road if we don't get more water.
One question.
Yes, Pradeep, and then I'll come up here.
Just wanted to comment that there was a newspaper report recently that the response of the citizens or residents regarding the warnings about the drought has not produced results as it was supposed to be with the governor's appeal. Do you think that there are some more stricter regulations coming down the pike, which you are aware of?
That's a good question. It may be time to start considering other encouragement to the community to conserve, but I don't know if the majority of the county is there yet. The majority of the county looks pretty good, as you have a distal water system that's based in the Sierras that brings us water. I think it looks okay from the subject matter experts that I've consulted. For the unincorporated county area, it's a different situation, because we're dealing with local surface water that's just drying up.
And maybe I can say from the board standpoint, we just received a report and it came up with several options we could consider. So we will be looking at those because, the county areas, the unincorporated, are getting to be in dire straits. The other areas, we don't want it to get there as well. So we are going to probably take a look at some of the different options that could possibly come down that the county can implement and then we'll have to see if there's city things as well.
Can I
Jack?
say something?
Sure.
It was difficult to hear you mention, closing YMCA camps and,
Speak up.
homes. It was difficult to hear, about that, that I think we could all do a better job in conserving water. And I think the message just needs to get out there that, hey, there are real consequences now, that there are people who are going to run out of water, that YMCA camps are closing. I read about the Memorial Park being closed because the stream is just about dry. So I think people just aren't taking it as seriously as they ought to. And I recognize that, most of us probably get water from Hetch Hetchy, which is up in the Sierras, but still there's a problem there too. So I think it wouldn't hurt to get out a press release or just get the word out regularly and let people know that, hey, this is pretty serious.
Jack, we got some questions and comments here. Sure.
Thank you. I know the board is going to consider some options, but Brian, maybe you could give us just on a high level what some of those options might be. Are there any alternatives, groundwater or trucking water up there?
There's water hauling, but it's a certain kind of water. It'd be potable water that's been treated. There's also another option, hauling raw water that could be hauled to our raw water storage. That could be treated, because we do still have a treatment plant in that area of La Honda, and then we can help maintain a regular flow that way. But it would be regular water hauling. It could be expensive. But for conservation, right now, there is a voluntary conservation request statewide and with our county as well. I think it was early as January 20 where our county did that. It's all voluntary. So unless you have a conservation method that has some kind of, something to it, something to gain from it, or some improvement that they could see, maybe that would be better. Don't know what the answer is.
I'm concerned about the coast side, not just Half Moon Bay, but Pescadero, because Pescadero also has groundwater and stuff. So are they going to be in vital need also, like La Honda?
Yeah, Pescadero is not in that situation that I know of right now, and I'm in touch with the agriculture commissioner on Pescadero, which is mostly growers and very few residents that are on water there. It's not at a critical level, but it has affected the farmers and the growers. A lot of them have had to haul water in, and they've had to haul feed in because there's no place for their animals to eat on the ground. But we're not at that level yet. Lower in the San Gregorio watershed is where you're talking about. Well, I'll keep an eye on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Any other comments? Yes, Marge.
Question, and I know there's probably a logical answer for this, but when you were talking about the town that is running out of water on Monday, and you're going to meet with them on Monday, my question that's haunting me is, why haven't you met with them sooner than Monday when they run out of water?
It just came to our attention that there are a population, it's a camp population with 100 people at it in the summertime. They have a maximum capacity of about 100, and they have a year-round capacity of 20. When there's 20 people there, it's not a problem. But when there's 40 people there, it's pretty critical. And it's not a water system that's governed by the county. It's actually governed by the state, and the state brought it to our attention this afternoon, and we met with them this afternoon. So we didn't waste but an hour getting there to meet with them.
Kudos. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marge. Any other questions or comments? Brian, thank you, and please keep us informed, and I know our board's going to be looking at some of this as well, so thank you.
Madam Chair, would you like this to be a standing item until?
I think that would be very helpful. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to Public Works Mutual Aid update. Oh, Randy.
Madam Chair, council members, good evening. I am not Afshin Asqui, as noted on your agenda, and I'll try and explain to you why I'm here. Most of you see me attending these on a regular basis in my capacity as the City of Brisbane's Director of Emergency Services, which I jokingly refer to as my nighttime job because our incidents always seem to happen at night. My daytime job is I'm the city's Director of Public Works, so I belong to the City and County Engineers Association, and that's what OFSHN is recognizing. Some of you will recall that a number of years ago we tried to do a Public Works Mutual Aid agreement. That produced a document, and that document was approved by the county, but not by a single city within the county. So I don't want to belabor that, but I want to focus on now is the positive things that have happened. We've gotten past some of that inertia. I think we've had a very fortunate synergy. Don Matei, now working for OES in his former capacity as the Chief of Police for the City of Belmont, had a conversation with AFSHN, who is the Director of Public Works for the City of Belmont, and AFSHN comes to us from San Diego. A lot of experience in San Diego with Public Works being involved in mass evacuations during wildland fires, which sadly seem to become an annual event for them. So that started a really good conversation that was brought to the city and county engineers, and that energy and that positive experience made that group decide to form a subgroup. The subgroup went off working closely with OES. We came and put together a document that we brought back to city and county engineers rather. It met that group's satisfaction. One of the things we're doing now as a supplement to that is we're working with Pat Halloran, who's the head of the San Mateo County Emergency Managers Association, also from Belmont. Is anybody else starting to see a focal point starting to occur there? That I'm not sure if it's a hostile takeover of the entire plan or not. You might want to walk out, which I can't believe. I was wondering if it is or not. I'm not quite sure. It's just it is a coup, but it's a bloodless coup apparently. But we're working with Pat to make sure that we implement the same zone concepts that the police and fire services do. Once we've got that settled out and we've got the public works director satisfied with it, we're going to bring it to the Emergency Services Council for you to review and make sure that you're comfortable with that. Bring it to all the cities and then bring it to get their input on it and then bring it back to everybody for adoption. I think it's going to be a wonderful thing. We finally got the public works people to say that, yes, it really would be a good idea to pre-plan this. I think part of the challenge that happens with public works people, and I speak from my role in that, is that we come to work every day and we expect that somebody's going to have broken something. So for us to plan for a lot of things to be broken is just like, well, that's just going to be a tougher day than usual. And so we had to get past that mindset. And I think we've done that. So I'd be happy to take any questions on this.
Thank you, Randy. That's good news. Terry?
You mentioned wildfires and public works directors. I don't understand the connection there in San Diego, why they would be involved. Is that in evacuating people?
Absolutely is.
Oh.
They're heavily involved in the evacuation and the sheltering because that's where you really have the largest amount of resources as far as people power to get out there and to set up the roadblocks and to transport people back and forth and to set up the shelters.
And it's not exactly the agenda item, but do you know if there's a wildfire worry in this county? Are we concerned because of the drought and the wildfire issue? Or
Well, the fire chiefs will tell you that they are.
Yeah.
They certainly will, and they're actually, I think, hoping for an El Nino where we get a bit of heavy rain because it's been hot, it's been dry. So you can look out, you can see the hillside. Certainly as we live on San Bruno Mountain, we have an annual exercise every year where we plan for that. We bring CAL FIRE in, make sure that their bulldozer crews and their helicopter attack crews are aware of the different zones and such. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
We tend to be a very green county, and I can tell you, Burlingame for one, Daly City has the gorse behind the southern hills. I mean, we've tried to do all we can to clean up. It's very brittle everywhere. So I think I would absolutely say we are all need to be on the lookout. It's not just, Southern California for sure.
Right,
So
yes, ma'am, absolutely.
thank you, Randy. Thank you very much for
Would
filling
you
in.
entertain some comments on drought, if I may?
You certainly may.
And I only ask because in my spare time, one of the other jobs I do, besides running our water systems, I'm the vice chair for the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency. So I wanted to speak to you a little bit about that in drought. I think sometimes there are mixed messages that we get out there in the press. I think the press is not very clear about the outlying areas that rely so much only on groundwater and so much only on surface water. And even sometimes, frankly, we will hear from the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission that the peninsula customers are not doing their job, and that's frankly not the case. The peninsula customers are doing a very good job. We're not quite at the 10% yet, but we are trending towards that, and we're trending towards it very well. And so one of the things I would encourage you to do is, whether you're a city that has your own water agency or whether you're like South San Francisco perhaps, where you're served by Cal Water, talk to your water service provider, talk to the person, your colleague who would be on the Bay Area Water Supply Board, or talk to even just the member of that agency, the manager, and ask him to explain or perhaps bring to your councils what their drought contingency plan is. Every one of these agencies, with the exception of Brisbane, because we're not required by law, has urban water management plans, and those urban water management plans have drought contingency plans embedded in them, We're in the process of redeveloping ours in a small city and redoing it. And I'll tell you, generally, people are doing a pretty good job. We're getting there. We can always do better. I think we all understand that we basically live in a high coastal desert. And so maybe we have to change our perceptions about whether everything needs to be green and manicured. But we're getting there. But I don't say that to tell you to take your eye off the ball. I say that just to remind you that we're working hard. And one of the things that has happened over the years as everyone has tightened up the plumbing code is that your ability to respond has started to become inelastic. And like, for instance, if you take a building that's an office building and they have no showers and they have waterless urinals and they have low flow toilets and they have 100% xeriscape on the outside, and you ask them to cut back on their water usage, well, their option for cutting back on the water usage is to bring water in from home to make coffee, right? Because that's all they've got. They've made it so hard that they can't take it back. So that's part of the challenge we're fighting, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing to be aware of. We need to be sensitive to these resources, but thank you for allowing
Thank you,
that.
Randy. That's very helpful. Miss you on Bosqua. Another night meeting. Anyway, very good. Disaster preparedness day update. Lieutenant Kernan.
Thank you. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge and thank Brian Mulver, our district coordinator, for your leadership and getting in front of this drought problem. We're the first coastal county in the state of California that's reported a drought problem to the state, and because of that, the state is taking it very seriously, and they had immediate feedback, and they jumped right in with us, and they're being very proactive and by creating this action plan, and that's because of Brian. So thank you, Brian. Also, Randy. Randy's also been very instrumental with helping us with our JPA revision, and we appreciate all of your help with the EMA, and as you can see, he's a very talented individual with what he just set up here a minute ago. So thanks to both of you. Okay, Disaster Preparedness Day. Our 10th annual Disaster Preparedness Day was just a few Saturdays ago. It coincided with the opening day of our San Mateo County Fair. We looked at it as an extreme, very successful day for us, especially on our 10th. It was opened by our very own Supervisor Tissier, along with Congresswoman Jackie Spear and Senator Jerry Hill and Under Sheriff Carlos Bolanos. We had a formal opening ceremony with an honor guard and flag detail, and Brian Mulver playing the bagpipes. So it started off strong. We had over 40. The sheriff provided over 47 of his volunteers to help manage the mass population of people who arrived early for the opening, and we had about 2,000 people at the entry gates that arrived, and we had 27 booths inside the actual fairgrounds. Each booth represented either a CERT team like Millbrae. I know you always come strong with your civilian emergency response team, and PG&E, Red Cross. We had 27 individual booths inside, and then we had 28 static displays of emergency vehicles on the outside. We also provided, and I'll read it to you so I get it right, we had presentations inside from the bomb squad, the SPCA. We had John Kmeyer from Central County Fire provided 3 CPR classes, and he trained over 200 individuals. We had OES Survivor, which Brian hosted, which was pretty fun, for San Andreas. USAR Search Dogs, CPR, and Red Cross. So it was very actively involved by all disciplines, very well received. It was a great exercise, a great collaboration with all the disciplines, and we set up a command post. I was the incident commander for the day, and it was a good day by all, and I'd like to maybe pass on some comments from Supervisor Tissier if you have anything you'd like to say.
Well, first off, I want to give kudos to OES and all the law enforcement and fire and safety groups, because it was a tremendous turnout. In the first half hour, we finished all our bags, which is 2,000 bags. And that was only to the adults. So all the children that came in, we figured we had between 4,000 and 5,000 people in that first hour. It was very well received, and it was very well organized. OES did a tremendous job. We dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's. Presentations were outstanding. In doing the dog rescue, the kids love that. They love all the trucks and all the cranes and everything else that was out there. So I really want to commend OES and all their staff, and the volunteers were tremendous. Chris Coe from the Sheriff's Department brought a lot of volunteers. Don Matei brought a lot of volunteers, and it was a great day, a great way to celebrate the 10th.
Thank you. And there's a loop of video. We had a little snippet that we provided earlier before the meeting, and it's also uploaded on the OES website. If you just get on the same website that we post all of these documents on now for our quarterly meetings, there's a link to a longer view of that. It's pretty nice to see. So thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Okay, our next item is Burlingame Neighborhood Network presentation. Terry Nagel's going to introduce it, and I see we have some wonderful presenters.
There. It didn't work? Oh.
And just quick on the...
So I'd like to introduce Kathy Schmidt, who is the chair of the Burlingame Neighborhood Network, who will begin the presentation, and Linda Friedland, who's on the Burlingame Neighborhood Network board, will follow up.
Great, thank you. And good evening, Madam Chair and the council members. Again, my name is Kathy Schmidt, and I'm the chair of the Burlingame Neighborhood Network. And we're here today to provide a presentation that's really designed to raise awareness around the concept of resiliency versus just preparedness. And this is when it comes to both cities and with citizens. We'll also talk a little bit about where Burlingame is on that road to resiliency, and touch briefly on what some other cities are doing. But first, let me begin by just sort of introducing our organization. So our mission is to encourage neighbors to connect with one another, to build a really sense of community and safety, to become informed about emergency and disaster preparedness, and to enable citizens to support one another during emergencies and disasters, and ideally recover more quickly afterwards. Our board is comprised of a small group of volunteers, a passionate group of volunteers, I have to say, and we're all working professionals who live in Burlingame. So some of our key accomplishments, just to let you know what we do, is we've established a BNN newsletter with an outreach of over 560 subscribers. We hold quarterly events for education, and these are forums designed to promote both connectedness and enable preparedness. Things like Make Your Own Emergency Kit Day. We have had the USGS earthquake expert Tom Brosher come and present. And we've also used that time to do what we call a tabletop drill to help neighbors think about how they would need to prepare and get organized in event of a disaster. And actually, it's a real-time tabletop drill that we do. We've also worked with both the Central County Fire Department, the Burlingame Police, and local hams to integrate the neighborhoods into a citywide disaster drill. So that was one of our, over the last 2 years, that's a real focus for us. So now that I've talked a little bit about who we are, let me talk about this resilience versus preparedness. And I have to apologize, we did have a handout, but it didn't quite make it tonight. So we'll provide that afterwards.
Yeah, that's my fault, and I'll email it to you.
No problem. So I've got a little snippet of it here, but FEMA and other experts are really now recognizing the importance of the community when it comes to a disaster. So this is from the learnings of Katrina and/or the tsunami in Japan or other major disasters. So So it's become important to understand that it's really the personal ties among the citizens and the community that can really make a difference, both in terms of survival during the disaster and recovery after a disaster. And also strengthening relationships before a disaster or emergency is really key. So in the handout, when you get it, is from the RAND Corporation, which is a nonprofit institution that helps to improve public policy and decision-making through research and analysis. They completed a study and highlights the importance of community and citizens in this journey to resiliency. And I'll talk a little bit about what I mean by resiliency. A resilient city is being defined as one that's more efficient and effective at responding during a disaster and recovering more quickly after disaster. So I want to highlight a few sections of the roadmap, and I've got two of them up here on the slide. So let's look at the left-hand side of the slide, and this is really showing what the difference is between resilience and preparedness. And again, sorry it's so small, we would have had handouts. But the preparedness side really tends to be planned-based and focused at the government level. So it's more about how does the city engage with and communicate and provide support at the city level. Resiliency brings in the whole community and is really more relationship-based. So it involves building preparedness and self-sufficiency at the individual level. It includes ongoing efforts to develop the capabilities at a community level. So this goes beyond just providing CERT classes or first aid classes, which is all great and good, but it's about having a regular, ongoing activities and events that keep your community and your citizens involved. It also requires a sustained local leadership and support. So resiliency also involves a different mindset around our citizens. It's one where they understand that they're not immune to disasters. They understand the need to build their own knowledge and skill set, and they know that they can count on their neighbors in the event of a disaster. So this is where most of us would like to see our cities. Now let's just think about this in real terms. So let's think about, on this roadmap to resiliency, what's important to the city and to citizens. So imagine if you have a 7.2 earthquake in the city. Hotels have collapsed and hundreds have been injured. You have water mains breaking. You've got water cut off to the neighborhoods. Gas lines might be broken in highly populated areas. Phone service could be interrupted. City resources will be consumed with addressing the major events and securing the infrastructure of the city. So it means that our citizens of all our cities are on their own for the next 24, 36, or longer hours. So let's think about what that would be like for most of our citizens. So for those that have not taken the steps to be prepared at the individual or neighborhood level. So they don't have supplies. People may not know their neighbors and have no support system. They can't communicate with the city resources because either the communication is down or maybe 911 is consumed with calls. And people are overwhelmed. So you really have the potential on the left-hand side of this slide for fear, confusion, panic, and even chaos. People could potentially start pouring into hospitals, firehouses, police stations, seeking help and information, and overwhelming our critical city resources who are trying to take care of the larger infrastructure. So let's move to the right and think what it means to be a resilient community. So this is where you've got individuals and families that are informed about disasters and have secured the supplies for their families. Neighbors know each other. They know the skills in their neighborhood, and they're there to support each other. Neighbors have participated in citywide disaster drills and know how to organize their blocks and their neighborhoods and take care of their immediate needs. Blocks and neighbors have a plan on how to communicate with local and area command posts and can report critical issues. And also importantly, the neighborhoods are able to communicate back to those city resources on behalf of their neighborhood. So they can receive messages and keep their neighbors informed. So instead of confusion, you have knowledge. Instead of panic, you have a sense of empowerment and efficiency, self-sufficiency. And instead of chaos, you have planned response. This is the vision that we have for Burlingame, and we think most of our cities have for their citizens. So getting to this point, getting to resiliency is really a journey, and each city tends to be at a different stage in their journey, and the means to get there can vary. So I'm going to speak to some fundamental pieces about where Burlingame is in our journey. So this is hard to see, but many of our cities have the core resources. So you've got obviously the city center itself, you've got a fire department, and you've got Burlingame, or you've got police department. And you have these groups working together on that overall citywide plan for resiliency and for preparedness. Now, in our city, as with many others, there are other groups that exist. You can have HAMs. We happen to have HAMs. We have CERTs, and we also have the Burlingame Neighborhood Network. So again, a group of citizens that are working to get people prepared. So in our city, we've made a lot of connections between all of these groups, and more importantly, so again, our group is focused on getting people connected and educated around preparedness. And in conjunction with these other groups, we've come together to actually integrate the citizens into those citywide drills. So it's been a big step for us. What we'd like to do is try to move that forward. And this is just a diagram that shows what exists in some other cities like Hillsborough, and there's even a piece of this in Palo Alto. And this is where there's a centralized, sort of a centralized resource that helps to bring the glue of all these organizations together in a very coordinated way. So both as citizens come to this city, this resource is able to tell them what's happening within these different groups. And also, they're able to get the information out to the citizens and have information come in through the citizens. So this is a resource that would help with citywide programs to drive connectedness and preparedness. Again, communication between groups, both out to the community and into the community. So, and also helping to bring these groups together to build a common vision. So with this now, I'm going to pass it over to Linda to talk a little bit about some other programs and activities that have taken place that will help not only Burlingame, but other cities move forward in this road to resiliency. And then also talk a little bit, and she's going to center on the communications between the citizens and the city, but also touch very lightly on some other programs that other cities are doing around either being connected or being prepared.
Hello, everyone. Madam Chair, Council. Essentially, as Kathy said, there's all the cities in the county and outside of the county too, down in Santa Clara, are trying to do a variety of different things to achieve these goals. One of the things that we were a part of in the last year and a half is the Peninsula Preparedness Network. And this was a network that was funded by a Silicon Valley grant that Burlingame and Palo Alto were two of the main cities that we're proud to be a part of. We also had some of the other cities that were included. Sunnyvale had some part in it, Mountain View, and we actually had representatives from other jurisdictions in the area. Everyone had someone coming in from all of the cities, Hillsborough, et cetera, Half Moon Bay, to be part of this. So it was very well represented. We actually were taking this from start to finish, and one of the points and purposes of this whole exercise was to kind of put together a communication plan, a template, if you will, where it could be the template for all to follow and have some continuity and have a way where we could actually have everybody working together in a congruent manner. And both Burlingame and Palo Alto did have tabletop exercises, which then became an actual exercise where we were using the different communication methods to show how the public, in our case, we used the Burlingame Neighborhood Network volunteers. We then used our hams, who also helped communicate, all the way up to the EOC that we were using at the time, and then up to the command centers. So it was a very interesting method to see the different ways we could do that, and we had an actual study and a functional book put together that can be utilized for all the different counties and the different emergency centers in those counties. That was one of the many exercises that have been done. We've also had Belmont, who has one of the handouts I believe that you have received shows what the different cities are doing in different manners. And every city has something different that they're doing. They all have some of the same flavor of what each are. Some involve their certs, some involve something similar to a BNN, some have a combination of the two, some have hams doing it. But all of these cities in our county are doing different things to help bring together the public as well as the different offices, emergencies, centers, and the groups that work together to help in the event of an emergency. One of them, Foster City, has a very, very active CERT program. They have a program that not only integrates their CERTs, but has ongoing CERT training throughout the year that's very advanced. If you see Belmont, they've got a Belmont Watch where they roll out, they have a neighborhood network and then something similar, and then they also have the fire departments and other departments visiting. We've got Sunnyvale, who has a very interesting program. Redwood City just had a couple weeks ago the mass casualty incident program, which I actually was part of, and is why I'm carrying this lovely boot on now, because I was a teacher who was shot. So a lot of these things are not only fascinating and interesting to learn about, but they bring the community together and they make us ask the questions that continue to make the different programs work and allow us to have us to look at and go, what else do we need? How else do we need to continue to make this all work? And for all of us to work together in a better manner. So please look at these different examples. I don't want to go over them too much for lack of time, but you all have this, and we are, the most important, this is our wonderful program that was put together to show you the different resources and how to put together different programs, and that was the point of this exercise. And it is a wonderful book that we put together in different practices that can be used amongst all the cities in the county. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Kathy and Linda. That was excellent. We may have some questions for you too. Ian?
Could I just add a couple quick
you
things?
sure can.
I just wanted to explain the handouts to you. The two big booklets that you got, the best practices for neighborhood preparedness groups and the field operations guides, are two of the deliverables from the grant from Silicon Valley Community Foundation. And they're designed to be templates that can be used in different cities to add your own flavor, if you will. You also have a handout that's kind of purple at the top, Peninsula Preparedness Network participants. This is a list that just shows the participation on the peninsula of people that actually did help plan and execute this grant. And I also wanted to point out that we have two of the key players. Ken Duker, would you stand up? He is the Emergency Services Coordinator for the City of Palo Alto. And Rocky Ibala, who's the Division Chief and Fire Marshal for the City of Burlingame. They were two of the folks that wrote the grant with me and a woman from City of Palo Alto. But what I really thought was interesting was collecting all the different examples of how cities are encouraging their neighborhood groups to get connected, build community, and then there are some really interesting incentives that are also built into some of the city programs that we might want to just rip off for our own cities. I just wanted to point those out. So thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Ian, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, I was curious how many folks are in the Burlingame network?
How many folks?
How many volunteers do you have in the Burlingame?
Well, we have a board of 7 people, and then over the time, we've been in existence since about 2007. I think we have helped start about 40 groups, and they are at different levels of activity, but we have quarterly meetings where we bring in speakers and encourage them to do programs. We're having one Saturday where we're having something called Family Feud Earthquake Edition, which will ask people to answer questions on emergency preparedness and make it a lot of fun. So all told, I think our mailing list is
560.
Yeah, it's over. Yeah, so I actually just added some more people.
Yeah, and then just one more thing to add. So again, also our other accomplishment was doing these, being integrated into citywide disaster drills. So we have, I think there was 7 or 8 blocks or neighborhoods that were involved this last time around. And so, our goal is to build the foundation, which is getting those neighborhood networks created. And then hopefully from those groups, we can get more of those involved in the citywide drill. So we're going to keep growing this.
Of the 500 or so folks that you have, are most of them CERT trained, or are they just people who are kind of interested but they don't have any training?
Yeah, I don't know if we
They're
know.
all, they're all over the map. I think there's about 160 trained in CERT in Burlingame, but they're all different levels. But what we've built, I think, particularly through these exercises, is the cohesiveness between the HAMs, the CERTs, the fire department, the police department. We know each other now, and we work together. And what our particular exercise in Burlingame, the scenario that we have built is that during a disaster, the neighborhood schools will become the area command posts. We have an MOU with the school district. So they were allowed to erect an antenna that can be accessed 24 hours by hams. So in the event of an emergency, the neighborhood groups would know that they could get help by going to their local school. That will communicate into the EOC, and the EOC will communicate back. So we can have two-way communication, not jam up the 911 lines. And at the same time, the neighborhoods would help one another. So they're not going to overwhelm the system, but they will be able to report out what the situation is.
And the one last piece to that, so for these drills, to get people used to this, we built what's called a emergency drill in a box, I guess you'd say. So it's like, I don't know if I'm in the corporate world, and when you do events, you have an event in the box to make it easy for people to replicate. So we've created a drill kit in the box. So people have all the forms they need, they've got the directions, they've got everything they need to run their own drill, so.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is because we have a very active network of CERT alumni in the community. I'm still on the mailing there, I'm CERT trained. And they kind of get together informally and do a bunch of stuff, even though we're not doing ongoing training for those folks. And so I'm thinking about what might be next in terms of getting them organized. They're already organized by neighborhood, so folks know who the CERT trained people are in the neighborhoods. And then we also have some trailers, some are stationary and some are mobile. But it might be worth looking at how we can structure that a little bit more.
Yeah. And the interesting part is, I would say we're maybe stronger on the neighborhood side and not as strong on the CERT side, and that's being built up this year, whereas yours is maybe bigger on the CERT side, and I think that's true for some other cities and maybe not as much at the neighborhood level. So it's kind of growing, you know, wherever you start, I think we're all trying to bring both sides up at all the sides up at the same time, and that's what we're excited about in Burlingame, is that we've got all these groups really engaged now, and everyone's wanting to really sort of bump this up and move the dial.
I would like to add, though, I think Redwood City is one of the most admirable programs, and you have this new, what's it called, the Neighborhood Liaison Program, which I think sounds absolutely fantastic. And San Mateo, another city in our county that does wonderful work. You won a Helen Putnam Award for your program, which I don't think involves any extra funding for a coordinator. But once a year, you go out and you get people to focus on preparedness. I think it's a really great program. So kudos to both of your cities, too.
And kudos to Terry for putting this together, because we all know every city's doing something, but I don't think we've ever had this document where it sort of brings all the pieces together. So, I mean, it'd be wonderful to keep something like this going as the new ideas come up, so we're not all, you know, starting from scratch, and we're able to pick those pieces that might work best for our cities.
And that's what I think is the value of this, and thank you, Terry. I'm very proud of our efforts in Redwood City.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of value in comparing what each city is doing and figuring out, you know, even though we think we're doing well, what could we learn from, and how can we bring some standards throughout the county?
That's a good point.
Two things. One is congratulations. It's a great concept and fills a big need in terms of taking care of the chaos which might happen and anticipating issues that might crop up at the time before it hits you. So I certainly kudos to all of you involved, which has resulted in this program. My question was, are you willing to give a brief version of your program to a city council of another city to let them get some ideas on the same wavelength?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we have to give a lot of credit to our police and fire departments too, because they have worked very closely with us on bringing people in and being available and so forth. So it's not just the Burlingame Neighborhood Network that's doing this. And the HAMs have really sprung into action. They're so excited that they finally have something to work on, you know, so it's been great.
That's great. And my second comment was that we in the county, with the help of the Office of the Emergency Services, are trying to coordinate communications at different levels, all the way from national, state, county, all across. So while this program does solve issues of chaosness or confusion, but you still need the link from this outside information coming into that group and the community. So have you established or tried to, or thinking about establishing some connections with the other network?
Well,
so maybe Rocky would want to talk to a few of these things.
Yeah, I mean, that's partly what the idea of the Peninsula Preparedness Network was. We thought we could share what we've learned in our own cities with one another. We can work together on the peninsula to start those connections. That was the idea. And if you want to continue working on that, we're more than willing to keep it going.
The idea of what we did was to be able to bring the EOC and network our EOC with the neighborhoods directly, and that communication piece is what does that. So in one of the things that the Bay Area has been doing right now with the Bay Area public-private partnerships, for example, is the establishment of liaisons and how the liaisons communicate to ensure such as Google, Facebook, Genentech, have that representative that work with the EOCs and work with the county operational area to communicate and know what's going on. Well, that same concept is being utilized at the neighborhood level with rather than 14, 15, 16 different neighborhoods trying to get information from the EOC, we utilize this network that has already been established to be able to push that information. The reason why we pick the public schools in our particular area is because we're heavy in our residential density in those types of areas. And if there's the assumption that you have streets that are blocked and the inability to get around town, what's the one place that you know in our residential neighborhoods people historically could walk to? And that was our public schools. So having that antenna being put up there, making our communications from there really worked in a positive light to be able to make that connection all the way from the feds, whether it's coming from the Joint Field Office or the state Cal OES or coming just from the operational area, whatever we receive in our EOC, our Emergency Operations Center, we'll be able to communicate that to the neighborhoods and be able to give them at least an understanding of what's going on. Hence, hopefully, relieve any discomfort or frustration with what's going on. And that's the biggest thing. Once you have an idea of what things are going on and what you can do, hopefully that helps calm the masses, if you will.
Thank you, Jack.
I just wanted to mention, well, one of the things that you're doing in Burlingame is that you're joining forces with the fire department, the police department, and neighborhood groups. And in San Mateo, we have a program that's called Be Ready, Be Safe, Be Involved. And essentially, it's joining together of neighborhood homeowners associations, United Homeowners of San Mateo, the Chamber of Commerce, the police and fire department, the neighborhood watch groups, and CERT training all together. So we have these groups, these organizations already, and it's a matter of sort of bringing them together and having them communicate and work together towards responding to disasters. So you don't necessarily have to create a whole new group of people. You probably already have them in your cities.
Thank you, Jack. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Lieutenant.
I'd just like to commend you. This is a great dialogue we're having. This is exactly what this forum is designed for, is for us working together to help each other. We also have another group called the Peninsula Clergy Network. Sorry. The Peninsula Clergy Network, we had a pilot project that we OES funded through local grant money. And we identified congregations, and we used Redwood City and I think Daly City as our pilot cities. And they identified neighborhood groups, or what they called clusters, and they drove their neighborhood citizens and residents to local congregations with a similar framework and mindset that you're using for the schools. So we may want to, we had a liaison at the EOC as our conduit of information. So we should maybe meet with the project managers and bring these two groups together, because if we're taking the same residents to a school or sending them to a congregation, we just, for our management purposes, we should probably work closer together since we're serving the same communities.
Great idea.
But thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Well, I certainly want to thank Kathy and Linda for coming and making the presentation. It was fantastic. A lot of great information, a lot of great handouts that we can all work with in our individual cities. I come from Daly City, so I will certainly make sure we get a lot of this information back to them as well. And Terry, thank you so much. You've done an incredible job over the years. I know this has truly been your passion, so you've done a great job. And thank you for taking the time. We have one last item, the Red Cross update. Olga?
Good evening, Madam Chair and Council. So from the Red Cross perspective, we have been spending the last few months doing a lot of partner shelter training in our areas. We're back to 90% of staff trained at Human Services Administration. So we finished the second circle of trainings with them on sheltering, and now training their selected staff for partner shelter management so they can actually ramp up and manage the shelters on their own. Additionally to that, we just scheduled a lot of not a lot, 3 trainings in the coastal area, 1 in Pacifica and 2 in Half Moon Bay, but they're really designed to cover the entire coast for both CERT or other affiliated volunteers and city staff. We're still working on our shelter sites assessment, and I told you last time that, we're still expecting some of our sites to respond, or some of the sites that have been designated as shelters to respond. So we're kind of narrowing down the list now, and I will be starting to work with your emergency managers for the cities that haven't responded yet, and then perhaps asking for your help if we can't get anywhere. Most of these shelter sites are either city properties or schools. We started working with the town of Portola Valley to organize some preparedness and shelter training courses for both volunteers and city staff and other members who would be interested. It is very likely that that would be coupled with a Woodside training as well, so we'll see about working together for both of those cities. And we have started probably about 6 months ago, so maybe about 6 months ago, working with the City of East Palo Alto Emergency Preparedness Group on forming a COAD. Now, we've been working with the group itself for quite a while, for several years now, but they now have gotten to a point where they're more or less organized. It's the same group of people at the table, and so we introduced the conversation about COAD, which is Community Organizations Active in Disaster. It's a smaller version of the VOAD, and we're starting with East Palo Alto first, and then we'll be reaching out to other southern cities like Redwood City and Atherton, and perhaps San Carlos, to kind of have a south end VOAD, and the one on the coast is going strong. So that's in a nutshell for the last couple of months.
Excellent. A lot of work going on.
That's only half of it.
Thank you so much, Olga. I appreciate it. We're now at public comment. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to address this board? Seeing no one rushing to the podium, we'll move on to announcements. Are there any announcements from any of the council members or OES? Seeing none. Okay, well, that looks like we'll be adjourning, and our next meeting will be Thursday, September 18th. No. Yes, September 18th. Great, thank you, everyone.
How are you doing? How's it?
It's been a while since I've seen you.
I know. How's our? It's yours. How's your?